There we go. I'm usually loud. Is everybody able to hear me all right? Close enough. Horseshoes, hand grenades, it's all good. All right, up next we have Jessa. She's an information security testing analyst at SureScripts in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Jessa holds an undergraduate degree in computer science and minor in environment and natural resources with research interests in offensive cloud security, IoT devices, web application API penetration testing. In her free time, Jessa likes to go backpacking, practice yoga, and spend time with her dog in no particular order. Let's give her a hand.
Cool. Hi, thank you for coming to my talk today. It's titled Gone Tishing. It's about abusing Microsoft Teams security misconfigurations for webhook hijacking and other shenanigans. So let's get started. A little bit about me. I'm a red teamer in healthcare. I do specifically penetration testing for web applications and the cloud. So I'm a cloud and IoT security enthusiast. So I do offensive security with the cloud and then also IoT with medical devices. But I'm also interested in DEF CON badge life. I'm a yoga instructor and runner, and I'm also a dog parent. So since I am a dog parent, I want to bring my dog, that's Atlas, in the main picture here. If you like my talk today, give me a follow on Twitter or follow me on LinkedIn. So for the agenda, we're going to talk about the background, what are the features within Microsoft Teams that allow these misconfigurations and this vulnerability to occur. And then going into the vulnerability itself, the misconfiguration, what it is, and how it works. And then how we can use that vulnerability to exploit and do other shenanigans that I'm going to talk about, specifically hijacking a webhook within the Teams environment and creating a phishing page and sending it out to your team. Then getting into some detection and prevention, so spotting a phishing message and how to remediate that within your team's environment. And then getting into the conclusion, just the difference between why do a phishing email versus a Teams phishing message, and then why do an unconventional phishing engagement in the first place instead of doing the standard email engagement. So then what we have up right here is a Teams connector. A Teams connector is a functionality within Teams that allows you to deliver third-party content and service updates into the Teams channel. So these are frequently used by developers to say, connect GitHub within your Teams channel environment. So this is pretty useful, say, if a developer wants to send GitHub notifications into their channel to communicate with their team. Hey, I just pushed something to our prod environment. This is what it is. So it's a very easy way to communicate back and forth within Teams. So the left screenshot here is just how to access that within your Teams environment. This is just a test channel, but just going into the settings and then clicking that connector option. As you see to the right here, it lists a bunch of different kinds of connectors that you can view within Teams. So there's plenty of different products and third-party components, but for this talk, I'm going to specifically focus on the webhook functionality that's offered within these connectors. So then what is a webhook? A webhook is kind of like that secret URL token that allows the third-party application to communicate within Teams. So it basically allows the authentication to happen. So once that third party has that token, it allows Teams to understand that this is what it's wanting to communicate with. So usually when you go to set up the third-party application like GitHub or ServiceNow, anything that you would like to have notifications for within Teams, it'll use that URL webhook to know that this is the channel it's communicating with this specific third-party application. A more formal definition is that it's a user-defined HTTP callback that communicates real-time data into Teams. So kind of like the example I gave before, if a developer pushes to GitHub, it allows this information to be communicated right into Teams and send that notification. so allowing that external web service interaction between channels and third-party notification. Other popular use cases besides GitHub would be developer system maintenance notifications with ServiceNow. So if a server went down, the maintenance channel will know. This is a very common use case. Or with Jenkins, Bitbucket, or ServiceNow. And then here's just a screenshot of what that setup webhook connector would look like within a Teams environment channel. You can, right here it says third-party notification, but that can be anything. It could be the GitHub or any third-party service you'd like to integrate it with. But the really interesting thing to see here is the view webhook here that's blocked out. That's actually the URL secret. So that's basically the authentication token that's allowing it to communicate with the third party. And it's pretty easy to just copy and paste once you get into the settings for the Teams channel that you're looking at. So then what does everyone think the vulnerability would be? The answer's in the meme, but any guesses here? Yes, thank you. So there's actually the default configuration within Teams. Once you are in the Teams environment, anyone can view these tokens. So even if you're not a part of the, say, developer team, someone can actually go into that channel and grab this token. So basically, once you're in a Teams environment, you're able to go in and see these webhooks that are configured within these channels that allow the third-party applications to communicate with it. So something that you can do here is go in and steal the webhook. So in the next slide is kind of just how you do that. And I'll wait till it restarts to kind of talk through it. But what someone would do would basically go into the settings for that channel and then click configured, and they can see all the webhooks that are created. And then all they really have to do is scroll down to view the URL. So obviously I'm not going to show you the URL here, but if you're interested, you can go back to slide 6 to see the full page. But the URL would be at the bottom of that page there. So once you steal the token, what can you do? So this is something that authenticates a third party into Teams. So there's no other credentials you need to send these messages into a corporate Teams environment. So what I decided to do is to create a credential harvester after I stole this token to see what if I could kind of trick developers into thinking, oh, this is a link to ServiceNow. If I click it, I'll just submit my credentials and see what the update is, but it would actually be a credential harvester to steal their username and password. And kind of how I did it is I used Postman to create a call that would communicate to the Teams channel that I wanted to send the notification in. So I took the URL that I stole and just pasted it in the little top bar where it says hijacked token pasted here. And then I created a Teams notification card. What developers usually do is they just go into the Microsoft documentation and copy and paste these template cards. So it's pretty easy to replicate their messages. And then in the red box where it says phishing landing page goes here, that's actually the link to the credential harvester. So if you look at the bottom screenshot, that's what it would just, what the message I was replicating would look like in a Teams environment. So it looks pretty legitimate. Since I did steal the webhook token, it already takes the name and the image of the webhook I took. So in this case, it was a ServiceNow notification. So it looks pretty normal. But then if you kind of hover over the view change request in ServiceNow, that's actually a link to a credential harvester. And just how I created that credential harvester, I used an open source project called GoFish. GoFish is really cool because since it is open source, you can configure it to your needs. So when I did do this project, GoFish was just for phishing emails, but I was able to go in and kind of change the code to get what I needed to get just the link for the Teams message. A really cool thing about GoFish is it actually collects all the information that you get from the people who click the link. So it collects who clicks the link, if they submitted credentials, and you can actually get their credentials. I wouldn't recommend doing this just because it does save their credentials in clear text. So if you're doing this in a corporate environment, that might not be the best option to be saving employees' credentials in clear text. Another really cool thing that I did, I went with a Microsoft sign-in page as a credential harvester, but since in this instance the legitimate page used SSO after they submitted credentials, it actually redirected them to the legitimate page that they were going to, which decreased any possible detection at that point. So it made it very, very legitimate looking. And then after submitting this message, what did I do? So I just kind of had to wait around to see what data I got. But I did find a successful attack vector for phishing. So I sent the message and I kind of just waited to see what information I got back. For this instance, I had to kind of send, it was a very active channel, so I had to send multiple phishing messages. And then it did get to the point where I had to introduce misspellings and other things to make it very obvious to the developers that this was a phishing engagement. So just kind of having to wait and see what type of feedback I got, and then changing my message based on the feedback to have a successful engagement. So just some attack solutions to prevent something like this from happening in the first place. For detection, it's very similar to a phishing email. So having employees look for misspellings in these messages, having them check the certificate of the website that they're going to see if it's legitimate, and then also checking the domain. So for this instance, instead of SAML, for the sign-in, I use SAMI, which looks very much like SAML, so it would be very difficult to detect if someone's just clicking the link unless they really looked at it. And then for prevention, just having employee security awareness training, teaching your employees that phishing happens outside of the email. A lot of employee security awareness trainings very much drill, phishing happens in an email, but it can happen elsewhere too. It can happen in Teams. A lot of employees don't think of phishing inside Teams because seems like a very enclosed environment that's difficult for it to happen, but it can still occur, as you see from this engagement. Also implementing a reporting or say something protocol. So having, if an employee sees something that's suspicious looking, how would they report that directly to the security team in a way that it's the instance fixed in a very quick and efficient way. And then also watching for misconfigurations. This whole engagement could have been prevented if that misconfiguration just allowed anyone, the only people who needed to see the webhook to see it, not the entire organization. So implementing a least privilege here. A really interesting thing about a lot of Microsoft products is there's these misconfigurations that exist that allow everyone to see something by default. So when you are using Microsoft applications, just making sure that you are checking these configurations. So only the people who set up the webhook can see the webhook, or likewise. And then just to kind of conclude here, why do an email phishing engagement versus a Teams phishing engagement, and just some similarities and differences. So for similarities, the detection is very similar, kind of like what I said before. There's misspellings, or the certificate might look weird, or the domain for the phishing link looks weird. So that's a similarity there, and they both can be used for security awareness trainings within the company. But they also have quite a bit of differences. So for a phishing email, you really just need the domain of the email. So if the company for their email, it's like first name, last name at email.com, or first.last name. That's really all an attacker needs to know. But for Teams, they do need to have those stolen credentials in the first place. but from there they can do an phishing engagement like this and steal other, maybe more significant credentials. Detection is also far less likely in Teams, so Teams avoids any warnings since you are using that authentication link. Teams automatically trust it and doesn't send any warnings. But for email, it notifies the external sender. So when you go into Outlook, if you're getting an email from an external resource, there's usually a very obvious flag. But Teams, there's no really flag there, so it's a lot less to be detected. And then also for reporting, it's a lot easier to report a phishing email since there's usually an option for it in the UI. But Teams doesn't really have that, so you do have to go through, let someone at your security team know about the issue instead of just reporting it in the Teams UI for them. And then lastly, the engagement for Teams is a lot longer because you do have to find the webhook that you're going to steal, set up the credential harvester, and set that write that postman message. So it can take a few months versus for an email engagement, it might take like a week or so. And usually for email, you get that feedback right away, but for Teams, you have to send a message and kind of adjust as needed. And then kind of just the last slide here to why get creative with the red team phishing engagement in the first place. You do find other vulnerabilities. So for this instance, I got to find that misconfiguration that allowed me to steal these webhooks. You get to test unconventional reporting procedures. So I got to see if an employee saw something that was really suspicious, how would they let the security team know? So it was a very kind of cool way to see, like, if an incident were to occur and there wasn't already a way to report it, how would someone let us know and how quickly would we find out? And then you get to learn more about potential open source tools. So I got to learn about GoFish, which was really awesome. And you just get to challenge your red team. So say your red team is done with their test for the year, they're kind of looking for potential engagements. Getting creative with phishing is a really fun way to do it. So I've seen like QR codes, like pasted in Office is another idea, but yeah, it's really cool to have give these type of challenges to your red team for something to do and learn. And then that's it, kind of moving into like the QA if there's any questions. Yeah. So for this engagement, we assumed that I already had stolen credentials. Yeah, or maybe like an Active Directory type of attack, getting those one credentials for the account. Yeah. You'll be able to see the feedback when people send messages in the channel. And then also with the GoFish, there's a campaign option where you can see the people who clicked it or interacted with the message. Yeah, so for this instance, since I did have access to the channel, I was able to see how people interacted with it. And actually, when I did this engagement, I was able to see the developers, once the phishing message was spotted, how were they reacting and telling people not to click the message and how they were talking about how they can report it. So I was able to see all of that since I did have that initial Teams access. Yeah. Just a normal user. So for this engagement, it was just a normal person who had one set of credentials and nothing else. So this was a misconfiguration that allowed anyone in the organization to see it. Any other questions? Yeah. Right. Since you do have that webhook, you do already have that point of authentication. The only thing would be if you did lose those credentials, you wouldn't see how people were reacting to the message within Teams, but you would still be able to see who was clicking, submitting credentials, and all of that through your Go Fish campaign. Yeah. Not very often. In this, like usually when they're just told to do it, from my experience, as like a red teamer, sometimes they don't even go in. So there's not a lot of like webhook changing hygiene. It's usually they set it up once and then don't think about it. So. Any other questions? Cool. Well, thank you. Please feel free to come up and ask me any questions if you have any. Thank you.